Have you ever been outside and looked up in the sky and saw this? I've seen that before. Geese flying in formation. Let me tell you a quick story. There was a pastor when we were raising our support, and he was a friend of Michelle's father. And we went and visited him. He told us this story, that he preached a whole sermon one time on the geese, and what I'm talking about today, how geese fly in this formation, and they have a lead goose who sounds out, honks, and the others follow, and they have a V, and they ascend behind them, because as the first one is out in front and breaking through the wind out front and giving lift to the ones behind, and then they alternate. As that one gets tired, he falls behind, another one takes the lead. And he told us this story after he preached that message, and then he asked a lady to pray at the end, and she was praying, and everybody was bowing their heads, and she said she was praying so fervently, and she was crying. She said, "Lord, I'm so thankful for our pastor. He's our lead honker, and he's out in front of us just breaking wind. He's always breaking wind for us." And he was up there just laughing hysterically. He couldn't hardly control himself. But it's amazing how these geese do this. They can fly further. And another interesting thing, if one got injured, if one got shot and went down, two other geese will go down and stay with that bird, right? I think this is a great picture for us, and I think it's no wonder that the Bible teaches something like this. It says, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. So we have, in the past number of weeks, we've been talking about soul strength, strengthening our souls, about filling our souls with the strong Spirit of God. Now, this has always been, this series, as a matter of fact, has always been a main focus, a purpose of Freedom Life Center. That's why our tagline is, we're not just a church, we're what? A gym for the soul. So if that's true, we can't overlook the role that other people are going to play in the process, even the formation of our lives. Now, if we're to be strong and we're to have healthy souls, this isn't going to happen on an island. This isn't going to happen by ourselves. How many remember the movie Castaway? Remember that? With Tom Hanks. I have a picture up there of that. One of the things that I remember most about this movie is, of course, he struggled to keep his physical body alive, didn't he? Right? But what I picked up in that too is that he struggled just as much to keep his soul alive. So desperate was he for community, what did he do? He made something to have fellowship with. Who was that? Wilson, exactly right. So Wilson becomes his companion. He talks to Wilson. He shares his struggles, his problems with him, even his joys with him. And he shares his heart with Wilson. See, I believe the soul cries out for life to be shared with others. And in the right setting, not only are we filled, but I believe we're much stronger. Listen, I'm going to read to you from a book by Dallas Willard. He says this: in fellowship, we engage in common activities of worship, study, prayer, celebration, and service with other disciples. This may involve assembling ourselves together in a large group or meeting with only a few. Personalities, listen to this part. Personalities united can contain more of God and sustain the force of his greater presence much better than scattered individuals. The fire of God kindles higher as the brands are charred pieces of wood, as brands are heaped together and each is warmed by the other's flame. The truth is, friends, we desperately need each other. Have you ever experienced this when working out? Have you ever go to the gym? Go to the gym? You go to the gym, and you can work out by yourself, and you can accomplish some things by yourself. But do you ever notice how when you work out with a partner that you can do more, that you're pushed to do more? Someone's there to encourage you. Someone's there to push you. Someone's there to challenge you. Someone's also there to protect you. Isn't that right? And so Proverbs 27:17 says this, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So here's some reasons in your notes, if you're taking notes, some reasons why I think that relationships are so helpful and so healthy for our souls. The first one is this. The first one is they keep you accountable. Now, it's so true. Tony's not here this morning, but years ago, Tony and I used to work out together. And I know sometimes it's easier just to stay home, to sleep in. Anybody? Sleep in? You guys are all here. The ones that are sleeping in, they're the ones that need to hear this, right? Stay home, eat bonbons, right? But you can't if there's someone at the gym waiting for you. I remember there were times when Tony and I would meet early in the morning, and sometimes I would wake up, you stay out late or whatever, and I wake up in the morning and go, I just really don't feel like going. But what do? You have to go. Why? Because you know that they're there. They're there and they're waiting for you. And so this idea of coming together and living life with others gives us an amount of accountability with one another. So you get off the couch, you get out of bed, and you go. And many times, not even for yourself. Isn't that true? It's for the person that's there, that's waiting for you, that's helping you, keeping you accountable. The second thing we kind of already touched on is this. They can push you to do more than you can do yourself many times. Now, you may be very self-disciplined, and you may even push yourself. But isn't it true if there's someone else there and they're not lifting the weights, they're not on the treadmill, whatever, and you get to your end and you go to stop and they go, that's it? No, you can do more. No, I'm done. No, you can do one more. Do one more. And they push you that extra little bit. Because it's easy, let's face it, it's easy sometimes to say enough is enough. So I told you last week I've been having trouble with my hip or whatever, so I thought, I need to start doing some things. So years ago I used to do yoga. Michelle's doing yoga now. So I started to do it at home. And so I started doing, just some beginner stuff. And wow, I tell you what, it is so easy for me to talk myself out of the 20-minute short little session. Well, it's my second time, 3 minutes is enough. I'll work my way up to, maybe I did a little more than that. Or you're planking, and you want to go for a minute, and it's just easy to say, that's enough for today. But if someone else was there, right, and they're next to me, that's what Tony and I used to do. We used to do that together. And I know I'm looking over at Tony, and I'm 61. I guess I don't know how old Tony is now, but I'd look over at him. He's, maybe 5 years older than me. And I thought, well, I have to go longer than him. No matter how long he goes, I at least have to go longer because I'm younger than he is. So it's hard to go that extra mile by yourself. So when you have help, they can help you do more. They can help you go further. They can help you climb higher, run faster, stay longer. Listen, Ecclesiastes 4 says this, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not easily broken. And I love there's another passage that says that 2 can do more than twice the work as 1. So it's not an addition thing, right? Is it with somebody else? It's not, well, if I can do this much work and we have another person, I can double that. No, it's not an addition. It's a multiplication issue. 2 can do more than twice the work as 1. Number 3 is this. Partners make it fun. The idea of partnering in life's journey takes, at least for me, in my life, it takes enjoyment to a completely other level. When you really partner with somebody, you connect in a in a deep way. Isn't that true? I mean, really connect with somebody. You connect on a heart level. Let me tell you a story from the Bible. The Apostle Paul had many such relationships like this, but there's one in particular that really impacted his life. And in a community, especially a faith community, I think, that we are, especially a faith community, we're mutually supportive, I believe, or at least we should be, giving and receiving from one another. So let me tell you this story. There's this man in the Bible. He's a good friend of Paul. His name was Philemon. And Philemon, back in the day, you may know, in the first century, they had slaves, right? As a matter of fact, for a long time, back in even America's history, people would use the Bible to validate slavery, which is ridiculous, right? I mean, we're all abolitionists here, and I believe this is maybe even the start of it here, because Philemon had a slave, and his slave's name was Onesimus. Now, Onesimus actually means useful one, and many slaves in the day had that name, useful one. And so Paul ends up meeting, what happens is Onesimus steals something from Philemon, and he flees to Rome, because a big city, he could kind of hide in the crowds there. But as fate would have it, he runs into Paul. And Paul ends up mentoring him and really leading him in the ways of Christ, providing him with wisdom and really mentoring and discipling him. But not only does Paul do this for Onesimus, what we find is Onesimus really is a great benefit to Paul as well. This living life together should be, no matter what it is, whether it's mentor, mentee, or equals or whatever, it's meant to be this sort of reciprocity that we learn and we grow from one another. Steve was telling me a story about a man who Steve looks up to as his mentor. And he was talking to him one time, and he said, listen, I'm getting more out of this relationship than you are. And Steve said, like, how can that be possible? How can that be possible? How can you be benefiting from me? But that's what living life together does. Isn't that right, Steve? Living life together there's this reciprocity that we learn and we grow from one another. Never think that no matter who you're talking to, that you have all the answers. That there's nothing you can learn from the other person. You should always be open. You should always be listening to find out, to hear what it is that you might be able to learn and how you might be able to grow in your own life. So after bringing Onesimus, this runaway slave, to Christ, Paul ends up sending him, now Paul's in prison, he ends up sending him back to Philemon. Now that doesn't sound very good, does it? Philemon was his master. He had a slave, and he stole from him and ran away. So listen to what how the Bible. Let me just tell you. There's a book in the Bible called Colossians. Paul wrote that. He also wrote Philemon, a small little book after Timothy and Titus. Then I think it's Philemon right after that. And so Paul wrote these two letters, and he sends these letters together with Philemon and Tychicus to go back to the church in Colossae. Now the church in Colossae met in Philemon's house. Did you get the picture? See what's happening? Okay, so here's what it says. But because of our love, I prefer, this is what Paul's writing down, I prefer simply to ask you, consider this as a request from me, Paul, an old man now, also a prisoner for the sake of Christ Jesus. Now he's in prison, he's in chains. He said, I appeal to you to show kindness to my child. He calls him my child because he's the one that kind of found him and helped him and mentored him and led him in the ways of Jesus. He said, my child Onesimus, I became his father, meaning he kind of led him to the Lord. I became his father in the faith while here in prison. Onesimus hasn't been much use to you in the past, but now he is very useful to both of us. Now, Paul's using a play on words here because Onesimus means useful. That's what the name means. So he said he hasn't been useful, but now he's useful to both of us. He says, I'm sending him back to you, and with him comes my own heart. Now, Paul had such a great relationship with Onesimus, he's willing to stick his neck out for Onesimus. He said, I wanted to keep him here with me for a while I'm in this change, because I'm in this change preaching the good news. And he would have helped me on your behalf. But I didn't want to do anything without your consent, talking to Philemon here. I wanted you to help because you were willing, not because you were forced. It seems that you lost Onesimus for a little while so that you could have him back forever. He is no longer like a slave to you. He is more than a slave. He is a beloved brother, especially to me. Now he will mean so much more to you, both as a man and as a brother in the Lord. So if you consider me your partner, Philemon, welcome him as you would welcome me. If he has wronged you in any way or owes you anything, Paul says, charge it to me. I, Paul, write this with my own hand. I will repay it. I won't mention that you owe me your very soul. I love that because I said, I'm not going to mention that you owe me your soul, but you owe me your soul. You know, he's the one that really kind of mentored Philemon and helped Philemon out. He said, listen, remember, you were lost one time too, and I was the one that came to you and helped you. Now I did the same thing for Philemon. For Onesimus, and I'm sending him back to you now, but not as a slave, as your brother in Christ. I just love that. You know, what amazes me is that there are still people today that insist that you can grow, not by their words, but by their actions. They insist that you can grow and you can mature as a follower of Christ by yourself. But the Bible paints a very, very different picture than that. That we need to actively participate and not just spectate in the life of the church family. Ephesians 4:16 says it this way: as each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow. So he's using this idea of the church being a body, talking about referencing our own bodies. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow. So the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. See, you're an important part of the family of God. You're an important part of this body of believers. You may not think you are. You may not feel like you are. You may not even know where you fit in. But just like Paul with this runaway slave, Onesimus said, listen, this was a reciprocity. This was something I gained from Onesimus as much as Onesimus gained. How can that be possible? This is the Apostle Paul, who wrote probably 13 of the books of the New Testament. And he's learning and growing from a runaway slave. How is that possible? That's the way it works, friends. That's the way partnership works. And if we're to have a healthy soul, we're first to be immersed in the presence and the Spirit of God. Now, I believe that's true with all my heart. That's got to take precedence. You need to learn how to do that in your own life to immerse. And listen, that's done in a myriad of ways. It's not just one way. We talked about it a number of weeks ago. There's all different ways in which people commune with God. But you need to find that way that touches your heart, that opens your heart, that warms your soul. Find that and nurture that. Then being with others who share the same affinity for a life in Christ, to journey together, is essential for our souls to be satisfied. Matthew 18:20 says this: for where two or three come together in my name, there am I with them. When we come together, this is what Dallas Willard was talking about too. There's something different about coming here together and being together and singing songs together or listening together or hearing a message together than sitting by yourself with some ear pods in and listening to a message. Listen, I know. Let me tell you why. Because I listen to probably 4 to 5 sermons a week. 4 or 5 a week. And they're good and everything, but there's something different about being here in a group setting and hearing and listening to the gospel be preached together. Listen to this. Therapist Will Miller writes this. I found this so fascinating. He said, if you talk to therapists today, the problems we see mostly are mood disorders, depression, anxiety, loneliness, and social detachment. He said, as blessed as we are, there's all this depression. So where is it coming from? And he says this. He said, I'm convinced it's rooted in the loss of refrigerator rights relationships. Refrigerator rights relationships. What's he saying? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I think another way to put this is this. Our relationships have come in modern times for all different sorts of reasons, right? For everything we've been through with the onset of social media, our relationships have become a mile wide. We know so many more people now, don't we? Listen, I could pull up your Facebook page and you're going to say, I have 800 friends, I have 300. You don't have 800 friends. You don't. But it feels like it's a mile wide. I know all these people, right? And listen, there are people that are good at that. My friend Mac, he's introduced me to more. He knows everybody. And he introduces me to so many people. But what happens is that our relationships become a mile wide and an inch deep. An inch deep. It seems that in an ever-connected world, we're doing away with real, deep, meaningful relationships. Everybody knows, what's my favorite sitcom? Seinfeld, exactly. Now, I think one of the reasons that I love Seinfeld so much is because of their relationships that I see in there. I think they have what Will Miller calls refrigerator rights. George, Elaine, especially Kramer. What do? They come into Jerry's apartment. Are you with me? What do? They go straight to the refrigerator, open it up, and Elaine's big for getting Snapple. She takes a Snapple out. Kramer just takes anything and everything. He'll come in, open it, take a bunch of stuff, and go back to his apartment. Right? These refrigerator rights type relationships. There's Kramer right there. This is the one time when Jerry went on a health kick, and Kramer goes in, he takes all his food. He said, where's the good food? He said, this is it. He said, listen, I may take it, but I'm not going to like it. He takes all his vegetables, and I'm not going to like it. Think about that. Think about your own life. Having someone in your house, and they have no need to ask permission to open up your refrigerator and get something to eat. Now, Brett and Brock have lots of friends like that over our house. One time I was down in Florida, I was visiting Jeff, and I went to the refrigerator, and I just, he was sitting right there. I opened it up and pulled out some olives, sitting on the table, opened it up, I got a spoon. I started eating olives. I just love eating olives. And he came around the other side, he grabbed a spoon, he came over, we're standing there, we're eating olives out of the jar, right? Refrigerator rights. Maybe we love that show. Maybe I love that show because we all desperately crave those kind of relationships. We all want our own version of Kramer, don't we? Someone living next door. And I was sitting there thinking about this. There's something strangely, almost comforting to have a relationship that deep, don't you think? Even though it may seem weird, but it's, like I said, it's just strangely comforting to know that there's such a depth of relationship. I love that phrase, refrigerator rights, someone eating food without asking out of your refrigerator. You know why? Because you can do the same thing. That's a deep relationship. And unfortunately, these kind of relationships are getting few and far between, harder and harder to come by. Well, here's why I read another book recently, and this author explained this phenomenon that he called linear relationships. We know lots of people, but those lots of people, they don't know each other. We're juggling many different worlds. We're juggling our relationship worlds, from our kids' sports teams to the office, the factory, wherever you work, the gym, church. What he says is all these people, these different groups in your life, these different worlds that you have, all these people, they don't know each other. I was in Florida one time, and Jeff said, I love it when my friends get along with my friends. And I feel the same way. I have my friends from the club here, right? They're coming. I love it when my friends can come and mingle with my other friends. That's the way it should be. That's the way life was meant to be lived. But we keep running from one world to the next, trying to just keep them all afloat. Listen, he writes this in the book. The most damaging aspect of linear relationships is that no one knows the real you. This can even include your mate, as he or she is often completely out of the loop on significant relationships that you manage. I'd like to offer this thought, he says. A person doesn't know the real you unless they know most of the people in your other circles. Why? Because the most important thing about you is the relationships that you have. I say it all the time. I tell my boys, show me your friends. I'll show you your future. Show me the people that you're hanging around. Show me the people that you're... When I was young, it wasn't hanging around. You know what the word was? Who can remember what the word was? Who are you loafing with? There you go. I love that. Who are you loafing with? Be careful who you're loafing with. He said, your relationship with God and with others. For community to be strong, people must share in those relationships with you. Wow. That is powerful. But I know what you're saying, because I thought it too. How in the world do we accomplish that? How do we bring our worlds together? Is there a place or a people where community is stressed and called for? A place that makes that kind of living its priority, part of its reason for existence. Did I hear anybody say church? Right? I believe that. So I'm going to read for you, I think it's on the back of your notes. Let me read to you what life was like in the first century. Talking about the followers of Jesus. It says this, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship. Now we don't use that word too much, fellowship. It's community. It's coming together. It's being together. And to the breaking of bread, eating together, and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to one another who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Sounds like these people had refrigerator rights. But wait, there's more. In chapter 4 it says, all the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had. With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all that there were no needy persons among them. For from time to time, those who owned land and houses sold them and brought the money from the sales and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone who had need. Now, what's the purpose of this? The purpose of this in here, this story in here, talking the way life was, is it to say that's the way you're supposed to do that? You should be doing that too. You should be giving. No, it's just, listen, it's just giving us a picture of how things were, of how they were. People chose this way. They wouldn't have it any other way. When you live in this type of community, those types of questions are very easily answered. The truth is that these types of relationships best happen in groups, sometimes small groups, sometimes, oftentimes before church, back in the foyer. And Michelle will testify, sometimes that goes on a little bit too long back in the foyer, huh, Michelle? Going into music. But it's good. It happens there. It happens after church. Many times I see people lingering in here talking out there, or maybe even in the parking lot. Many times it happens around the dinner table. That's why we do meal groups. We do meal groups because we kind of force you, right, to do the thing that we know is healthy for us, but we kind of don't do sometimes, is get together with others and break bread. And the whole intention is this. The whole intention is to sit together. And how many, be honest with me, who's done a meal group? Raise your hand. Done a meal group? How many of you was it frustrating when you were trying to find a date? Be honest, was it frustrating trying to find a date? How about whose house it was going to be at? How about if it was at your house? Was it frustrating that people were all in your kitchen and going through cabinets and stuff like that? That's frustrating, right? But all that was doing was helping us break down these barriers that we put up and opening ourselves up and being vulnerable and welcoming people into our real lives. And when it's all said and done, this happens every single time. People will come up to us afterwards and go, the group you put me in was perfect. You couldn't have picked a better group. As a matter of fact, we want to get together as a group again sometime. And I say, I mean, that's great, that's wonderful, but what you don't realize is it wasn't a special group. It was that you made the effort, that you opened up your heart, that you welcomed them, whether you were in their house and you had to say, hey, listen, I need, where do you keep this? Where's that at? You had to open up refrigerators, and that's, you had to do that stuff. Then you cooked the meal together, then you sat down and you ate the meal together. Listen, everything that we do, friends, this is what I want you to know, everything that we do, the ulterior motive to everything that we do is to bring us together. Like when we have our chili cook-off, it's not even to make money. What do we make? I mean, a couple $100, that's no big deal. The point is to bring everybody together. And you know what? Here's what I would think. I would think, because I think this is so important, that we would have to our events 200% participation. 200%. Because I would think that what you would want to do is say, hey, you've got to come with me to this. You're in this world with me. Come to this world with me. Experience this part of my world. You're going to find it fabulous. And you're going to enjoy yourself. But I don't think we quite grasp it yet, because rather than 200% participation, sometimes we have 40%. Because we just don't understand the importance of living life together. Listen, the Bible is chock full of it. The early church met regularly, and they met in people's homes, and they broke bread together, and they were devoted, and they shared in each other's lives. Community comes when you know the many worlds of those around you. I wonder sometimes, just think of your own life. Do you have worlds that even your spouse isn't even part of, that doesn't even know about, isn't connected with that part of you? Perhaps church is the perfect world for us to have our worlds collide. I think it's true. So we should team up. Let's stand. Father, again, we're thankful. We're thankful for the relationship that we have. God, help us to focus on going ever deeper in those relationships. I know it's hard for us sometimes because being vulnerable is a scary thing. We worry, God, that if someone really knew what we're really like, they wouldn't like us. But what we discover is that we have a commonness that goes so much further with the struggles that we have. And as we share those, as we make ourselves vulnerable, those relationships go deeper and they get stronger and stronger and stronger. God, we want to build strong, healthy souls. So help us, God, to do that by the power of your Spirit as we team up. We thank you in Jesus' name. Thank you, friends. Have a great day.